Hello and welcome! This is Mouse Gunner, and this video is going to be part of a series of tutorials covering the upcoming BattleTech video game. This time around, I'll be discussing how damage is dealt to a mech. As this is a video game that is not yet out, some of the information in this video is subject to change. As a result, I will talk about some things in broad terms rather than getting bogged down in specifics that may not be true in the future. When damage is dealt to a mech, it will hit various different locations of that mech. Where damage lands and what happens to a location when it takes damage could potentially impact the functionality of the mech afterwards. These locations include the arms, of which there are two, a left and a right arm, the two legs, the right and left leg, three torso sections, left, right, and center torso, and finally, the head. Which location is hit by an attack is determined randomly, with some locations having a higher probability of being hit depending on the angle of the incoming attack. Our target mech will have 4 arcs that put together form equal quadrants of a circle around the mech. These 4 arcs determine the probability of locations hit and which locations can be hit. These constitute the front arc, left and right arcs, and the rear arc. Attacks from the two sides are more likely to hit locations on that side, while conversely locations on the opposite side are unlikely to be hit. Front and rear arcs determine which type of torso armor will take damage. The head, being a small target, is in general the most unlikely to be hit, whereas the torso sections and arms are the most likely to take damage. Each weapon can only perform 1 attack per turn, and normally will only calculate once on which location will be hit and do all damage to that one location. But some weapons such as SRMs will fire multiple projectiles in a single attack, each of which are calculated separately. As a result, weapons like the SRM can hit multiple locations in a single attack, and each projectile can effectively be considered its own attack insofar as how it calculates locations hit and inflicts damage. Every location on the body of the mech will have its own armor value, and the 3 torso sections also have a separate armor value for attacks coming from the rear arc of the mech. Attacks coming from any other arc will be applied to the frontal armor of that location. As attacks land on a mech, it will deplete the armor value of the location receiving damage. In the video game, this is represented by the darkening of the armor at that location, with white representing an undamaged mech. Once armor is fully depleted, any remaining or new damage will transfer to the internal structure of the location in question. As internal structure is damaged, the location will take on an orange hue that will darken as damage becomes more severe. Torso sections do not have separate internal structure values for the front and rear, so an attack through breach rear armor will damage the same internal structure that attacks through frontal armor would. The amount of internal structure a mech has is solely dependent on how heavy the mech is, with heavier mechs having more than lighter ones. Anytime internal structure of a location takes damage, it has the chance of triggering a critical hit if applicable. Critical hits can have a number of outcomes and is dependent on the equipment inside the location being hit. It can include damage to weapon systems, destruction of heat sinks, or trigger the explosion of an ammunition store, for example. All critical hits will affect the functionality of the mech in some way, and in the case of an ammo explosion can inflict further damage on the mech, in addition to that inflicted by the attack that caused it. Once a location's internal structure has been depleted, that location of the mech is destroyed, disabling any remaining systems in that location. Any remaining damage after destroying a section will transfer inwards to a different location until the full damage of the attack has been tallied or the mech has been fully disabled, removing it effectively from play. Transfer of damage is dependent on the location the damage originates. In general, it will transfer towards the center torso, going to the next closest location along that path. If the next location the damage transfers to is also destroyed, the damage will continue to be transferred centrally. As far as destruction of locations go, there is one special factor in that if the left or right torso is destroyed, it takes the corresponding arm with it, and any remaining damage will transfer as normal to the center torso. Any future hits to a destroyed location will transfer the damage along the same path remaining damage would after destroying the location. If this transfers the damage to another destroyed location, it will continue to transfer the damage inwardly until it is fully applied to a location or the mech is fully disabled. This generally means that the likelihood that damage will be applied to the center torso of a mech increases as more locations are destroyed. A mech is considered fully disabled if one of 4 conditions are true. The center torso has been destroyed, both legs have been destroyed, the head has been destroyed, or the pilot has been killed. Of these 4 conditions, destruction of the center torso is the most likely due to the higher probability of a hit to that location, as well as the natural path of damage transfer routing towards the center torso. Destruction of the head of a mech can be the most sudden cause of a mech being disabled, but the fact that the head is unlikely to be hit by an attack keeps this occurrence relatively rare. Pilots take injuries anytime the head is hit, regardless of whether armor is still intact or how much damage has been inflicted, and after mechs have taken falls. If the pilot takes enough injuries, they will die, effectively disabling the mech. That is going to wrap up my discussion of how damage is done to mechs. I hope this tutorial has helped you better understand how damage affects a mech, transfers from one location to another, and ultimately disables a mech. In any case, I hope you have enjoyed the video. This is mechs, signing out.